other speakers are very loud and you're very quiet.
Better.
I don't think it's just the mic. There's something with Teams or something like that.
I think you're muted, Kate.
I should be coming through the room audio and not my.
Yeah, so we can hear you, but it's just very, very quiet.
I think he's right. The your mic has a red light on it, so it may be muted.
All right, IT is in the room with us, so I will try to speak loud and hopefully they can take care of any issues.
This always happens on your first day, you know.
Thank you. That does feel like what happens. Non-voting members of the commission are Lieutenant Turley. Are you present with us? Don't believe so. And then our traffic engineer, Jeff Bowman.
I'm here.
Present, great. And then other city staff, Stephanie Santana.
Present.
Martin Ince. I see Martin, but I don't hear Martin. That's okay, we know you're present, Martin. Reed Miller.
I'm here, present.
And David Lemke.
I'm here as well, also present.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us this morning. This afternoon. It's been a day. All right. First item on the agenda is our preliminary general business, and we do public comment. I don't think I actually, I do see members of the public. Great. I will go ahead and read this. So at this time, any member of the public may address the commission on any subject within the commission's jurisdiction that is not on this meeting's agenda. The Arizona open meeting law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on items that is not listed on the agenda. Commissioners may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the commission, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. To address the commission on an item that is on the agenda, please wait for me to call public comment on that particular item. So is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on an item not on the agenda? Councilmember Shimoni, welcome. I'm sorry I didn't introduce council members.
Oh, you're good. It's not important. Hi, Chair Morley and commissioners and staff. Just wanted to say hi and welcome and thank you all for your service and being here today for this important commission's meeting. Just wanted to welcome you all again and just wanted to, communicate to you all if you haven't been tuning into the council meetings. There's been a lot of great movement from our elected body, whether it be in regards to Vision Zero, working towards the big shift, topics like the ATMP getting adopted last night that Ms. Morley was present for and spoke on behalf. So thank you to those that engaged in that process and to Martin and the team and Jeff. Congratulations to Team Flagstaff. We've been making a lot of really big headway and hiring the consultant firm to work on the outreach plan for the 4th Street in Butler widening. I just wanted to communicate all the great work that the council's been doing and hope to see that ripple throughout our code over the years to come and be reflected through the work you all do and the advocacy you all do in trying to reach Vision Zero, net neutrality, the big shift, all these great things that the ATMP outlines and more. You all play a huge role in this process as commissioners on this important commission, and looking forward to your discussion today. So thank you, and I hope you have a really wonderful meeting.
Thank you, council member. We appreciate that. And I will take a moment to also let Councilmember McCarthy introduce himself.
I think Mr. Shimoni said it very well, but it's always good to be here, and thank you guys for your service. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Any other comment from the public on an item not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we have no minutes today. Those will come with our next meeting. And then moving on to outgoing member appreciation. Is this you, Jeff?
Sure, yeah. This is me and just an open forum for any commissioners. We had 4 appointments last night at City Council for commission seats. So we had 3 new members. So 2 new citizen members, which do replace 2 people that are here tonight. A 3rd seat, FUSD was appointed last night. Were reappointed. So that was 4. That was our 4. So 1 reappointment and 3 new. So outgoing members based on term limits and, well, I guess Nick is not necessarily a term limit yet, but Nick and Julie are both at their last meeting because they have termed up or finished their terms and have quickly been replaced, which is sad because usually we get to keep people for a while. Julie's on 6+ years, chair for a few years. I don't have a scorecard, but a few years. Lots of long meetings, lots of good meetings. Shared some emails, my thanks, but I do appreciate all the time and commitment to this, especially as chair. I know that's, we'll miss you. We hope you'll come back someday. But maybe not. Maybe you'll move on to bigger and better things or other commissions. It's very valuable having you around. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. It is. It's a little bittersweet because it's been 6 years. Transportation is something I'm particularly passionate about in our community, and have been engaged with transportation-related issues for a really long time. What's interesting is, I kind of rolled off of regional plan and moved into Transportation Commission, and I'm not rolling into anything in particular at this moment. So we'll see what unfolds in the next 6 months or a year, but I'm not going anywhere.
Julie, we will find more projects for you. Don't worry. That's not a problem. I'd also just like to express my appreciation and you leading us as chair through, I think, most of COVID, quite frankly, and understanding hybrid meetings and keeping us together. So very much appreciate that role in addition to your perspective on policy and the issues that we've addressed over the course of a couple years. Any other comments for Julie? And then we'll talk about Commissioner Kraft.
So Commissioner Kraft did roll to us kind of. There was a gap, but he spent time on the Citizens Transportation Tax Commission. He was actually the chair of that commission, which was, so like 15 members or 18. It was huge. It was everyone up here. There's people down here. It was a massive group and kind of storming for a while and figuring things out. That was a really hard group to lead. And then we luckily recruited him. I didn't have anything to do with recruiting, but Julie recruited him, I think, to come over to Transportation Commission. That was awesome. And that was great to have that continuity and steady hand, especially on lots of the 419 stuff that he had a strong interest in. And so Nick, also time has come. This is his last meeting.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I was gonna add on that the mark you've left on this community leading that Citizens Tax Initiative is going to be long lasting and much appreciated and bring great projects to this town. So thank you for your service as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't renew the last time my term came up, so I didn't have done about 4 years. I just left it open to see if someone else wanted to play. And now they do. So it's been fun and good luck to you all. I like your chair jacket. That's cool.
Thank you. Thank you. There was a best dad ever sign up here, but Jeff took it from me. So that's
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Any other commissioners want to make any comments on this topic?
It was great working with you, Nick, and thanks for coming over after the tax commission. And I really appreciated bringing your voice into this discussion to have that history and the basis for the work that we do.
Thanks, and thank you too.
And you can't walk out the door just yet. We have a meeting still.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. With that, we'll move on. There's no new business tonight. So we'll move right to item 3, old business and the residential traffic management program updates. Steph.
So let's talk about the residential traffic management program. I have a PowerPoint presentation right here. We have had a residential traffic management program for a number of years. I think we're pushing 10 years since we first created this document. And we have seen a few changes in the community, both in interest in this program and staffing and just in general, and thought, boy, it's definitely been time to take a look at the guide. I think we sent you the draft document a month ago, roughly, to take a look at. We've continued to, we talked about it just briefly last month, continued to fine tune it a bit. The presentation is based on some of that brief discussion last month and some of the research we've been doing into what other communities are doing. So this presentation will have a little bit of updated information from what you've seen in the last draft, but our thoughts are we'll keep good notes tonight. We'll update the draft and we'll hopefully next month we'll be finished. And it may be real quick next month or maybe a longer discussion. We'll see how tonight goes. And this, I have to give credit to David and Stephanie and Reed's been working on this too a bit. Martin's been chiming in, kind of everyone's been working on it. David has a cold and this is his presentation, but I'm gonna pinch hit for him tonight because his voice would not make it through the whole presentation. So, as I mentioned, 2012 was the last time we created this document, or the first time we created it, and also the last time.
Jeff, your screen stopped sharing. It looks like Joe Donaldson's screen.
We did this last month. How do we fix it? Give me a minute. I had to do.
If those online could just hold tight while we try to work on the technology here.
You can see it online. It shows we got the good one. Okay. Let's see, where was I? Okay, so updates needed. Again, a couple of things really are highlighted the need for updating that impact score sheet, and we'll look at it here. Clear neighborhood participation and approval. We have many projects that may have neighborhood support, but have definitely been brought forward by just one person. So the current process, and we'll talk about it in more detail, but the current process just takes a person coming and asking, let's start something. And then an annual budget. We really don't have a budget allocation. In the past, projects have been pretty small, and we've been able to find a way to fund them. We need to do better on that front because some of the projects that are coming through now are quite expensive. And again, updates are based on what we saw with other cities, mostly in Arizona, who also have updated these things more recently. So remember, this guide is all about traffic calming. David found this definition. The primary purpose of traffic calming is to support the livability and vitality of residential and commercial areas through improvements in non-motorist safety, mobility, and comfort. Right? Typically, these traffic calming projects actually rarely have safety records of vehicle crashes or pedestrian crashes. It has a whole bunch to do with livability and vitality of neighborhoods. And these objectives are typically achieved by reducing vehicle speeds or volumes on a single street or a network of streets. Here's another traffic calming definition. Traffic calming measures, and this is more of a description of traffic calming than a definition, but it consists of horizontal, vertical, so horizontal shifts in the lane, in travel lanes, vertical shifts, lane narrowings, can be what's happening on the roadside, so roadside activity, and other features, and this is the important part, it's self-enforcing. either physical or psychoperception means. So psychoperception things are typically striping to produce desired effects. So here's a couple of pictures, bump outs or a roadway narrowing. That also probably would fall into what's happening on the roadside a bit, because you may not actually be changing the lane width, but it feels like the lane width has changed because you brought those edges in. And a pedestrian island or center narrowing is that other picture. Here's also part of the reason why we need to update this program. This is a fairly current map, though as we looked it over today, it's actually changed this week again. So cities experience an increase in traffic calming requests. I thought, or kind of was attributing it to COVID, but it's really continued even as people have gone back to work. So I'm not sure, I don't know the root cause, if there's just more information in the community. People know about this program and it just wasn't that known before. So lots more people are taking advantage or wanting to be a part of it. There maybe things are actually changing in the community. People are driving faster. People are using local streets more. I really don't know what's caused it, but we definitely have seen, we're on like our third year of really, really high levels of activity in this arena. So this is a map of 16 current requests. We actually had one on Cherry that we worked through this week, and it's actually off the list, but didn't make the map. So we had another one. We were at 17, got that one taken care of. And then just today, someone said there's another one. I can't remember, but there's another one that's come in. So maybe we're back at 17 again. But you'll recognize some of these, a couple stars up on Fremont, because we've got 2 requests up there. There's a relatively new one in Railroad Springs. Over on the left, I can use my cursor to help you navigate around town. The 2 that we've been working on, Woody Way and University. This is Woodland Drive down here, southeast. Couple over here, Country Club, Mount Pleasance. A couple in the Fox Glen area, and then this whole cluster of, a couple of Linda Vistas, a Lockett, 4th Street, a couple in Sunnyside. Real active cluster of requests in this area. So yeah, anyways, 16 active requests again. Each of them typically has come in as a single person making a request, and you'll see how we think that maybe should change a bit with the new program. So new process, total of 7 steps, and we'll highlight in this presentation what we're changing. So the flow chart on the left is the old flow chart, and we have simplified, which is rare for us when we update a process. It usually doesn't get simpler. But there is a bit of a do loop between 3 and 6, so it may not be all that much simpler, but it does look better. And we'll kind of walk through the steps one by one, so I wasn't going to spend time here necessarily, but you can see step 1, file the request. Staff collects data. We work up some mitigation, have a commission meeting, and then we survey the neighborhood to see if they are interested in this process, trial implementations, and again, go back through the process to make sure those trial implementations are working, and finally make trial implementations permanent. We'll go through this in step by step instead of spending time in that flow chart. So this is a pretty similar form to what is in the packet today, except this has the signature block for the 10 people that we're looking for over 18 years of age. They can be from the same address, but we're looking for 10 people to support this request for study, because there is some impact to doing these studies. I think this year we were just looking through the record, and we've been out 23 times to do studies so far this year. And a study typically takes a week. There's a setting that, takes 2 or 3 people to go out and set, 2 people usually to pick up, and then there's maintenance all week to make sure the hoses stay down. So it's not a ton, it's not every day, but it's relatively significant. That's, again, about 23 of them so far. And sometimes it's just there isn't even a problem, so you don't see them and we don't keep working on them. Sometimes, as you know, there is a problem. We work on them. Sometimes it's a different level and it ends up at the commission. So this is the form that we're recommending. 10 signatures over 18, they can be all from the same household if that were possible, or they can be neighbors ideally. That's what we're typically looking for. Keep going, maybe we can come back with questions, but you could definitely stop me if you want as we go. This is the data form. You're probably pretty familiar with this. This is the form that we've been using for years. We've modified it slightly. And you can see that at the bottom. Impact score sheet will not consider cut-through traffic. In the past, we had a cut-through traffic scoring criteria, and frankly, it's really hard to gather that data. We did some of that data with Boulder Point, if you remember. We had the street light, cell phone tracking, which was really neat to see it, but it's very time consuming to collect. And cut through is not usually the complaint. It's rare. It does come in, but it's usually not the complaint. So we've eliminated that from the score sheet because, again, we just, in the 10 years that we've been doing this, I think that's the first time with Boulder Point we've ever even looked into it. We could look into it separately, but it's not part of the scoring. And there's a note here at the bottom. I think someone can pull that, click that. There is a note here on the bottom that if we do the study of the complaint and it doesn't meet the thresholds, then it gets kind of kicked out of the system because there isn't an identified problem. But the folks that made that request or other people are welcome to come back, but they need to wait 12 months. They can't, we don't want people turning a new form in every month. That's kind of the highlights of the changes to that. So step 3 would be a public meeting. So at the next, and this would be the next available Transportation Commission meeting after the study is completed and staff have had a chance to put together some solutions. So it wouldn't be like request in May and we'd see them in June. There would be a time period, a lag for sure. So the next available, staff will present several possible solutions to the commission. The requester and the residents from the affected area will be invited to discuss or describe their concerns in the area. One of the questions we have, and you can see at the last bullet here, do you think we should send this Transportation Commission meeting invitation to like a postcard group of an impacted area for this first discussion? Or is it more beneficial to invite that list of 10 people that initiated the project to have more a small group discussion prior to bringing in the whole neighborhood? So that was one of the questions on this decision point. And if we are looking at this larger affected area, staff would figure out what that looks like, which would be, again, different than the 10 people perhaps. And the old process said that the requesting person needed to create a neighborhood committee, which kind of has happened in some cases, but it's not been very formal and we didn't really define what that looked like. The idea was that the old process idea was that someone would request, then they would kind of rally their neighborhood, which sometimes happens, but isn't always happening. This is requiring, again, that we get at least 10 people interested before we start the process.
Jeff, I think we have a question from Councilmember McCarthy.
Well, I hope you don't mind if I make a comment on that. I live in Boulder Point, and of course, you know what's been going on in Boulder Point. But I think it would be good to reach out to the affected area, because what's happening is the average person doesn't get involved at all, but there's this core group of zealots that are very motivated on this. And so the only people we hear from at council or at this meeting, Transportation Commission, is the people that are just really focused on this. And they don't necessarily represent the neighborhood. I just sent you an email today from someone that was making fun of what's going on in Boulder Point because they hate it. You know, a lot of my neighbors go, why are we doing this? Well, we don't hear from those people because they don't know about it. The ones we hear about are these very focused people that are very motivated. So I'm thinking it'd be better to reach out a little broader.
Earlier in the process, because this is that very first step when we first present the
Well,
results.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought that through, but you know, somewhere in the process before we actually do something, I'll leave that up to you for now or to the other commissioners to comment on that, when to get them involved. But at some point, we need to get the whole community involved, not just the people that are very focused on the issue.
We feel, staff feels the same way. And yeah, and the question is, at what point do you bring in that group? Is it at the first meeting or is it later on? But yeah, so the good point in discussion.
Online, the two commissioners who have comments, do you have comments or questions? I'll take questions. We'll save comments for then.
I guess mine's more of a question. Well, no. They can wait to the end. It was just, it seemed like he was asking for feedback now on that slide.
Do you want feedback? Do you want us to pause and give you feedback on this slide? or-
I'm happy to do it either way. I can go back through to the questions or we can just stop at each slide.
Let's
I'm
go
good either way.
through to the end in case there's public input on the questions that we want to hear first. So I'm trying to write them down, but we can go back to them and make sure we get them answered for
Okay.
you.
Sounds good. I'll keep going. So that's step 3, which again is, step 1, we had the request, we did the study, and now staff is coming back to the commission with possible solutions. Well, we're coming back with the study results, which indicate that traffic calming is recommended, and we're coming with solutions at the same time, or potential solutions to be discussed. So here's where we're recommending kind of the wider mailing, but maybe again it happens at step 3. So at step 4, staff mails out a packet explaining the selected mitigation strategy to all affected parties in the neighborhood. Typically it's 15 to 30. With Boulder Point, it could be quite a bit more extensive. Typically, and this is what we're seeing from other communities, they, if they're looking at traffic calming in a certain block, they just go to the next intersections is what they're typically looking for with this notification period. And staff mails out a packet. It might not be a packet. It might be a postcard with a link to a website. Don't worry about those kind of details yet. We're still kind of working through what the best way to communicate is in 2022. But the idea is that we would identify this impacted area. Again, other cities typically go intersection to intersection. Within the packet will be a survey postcard that will need to be signed and mailed or dropped off. Again, we're sorting out how to do that if there's an electronic way to indicate if the residents are in support of the mitigation. So again, this is the trial mitigation. So we've determined traffic calming is needed. We've come up with potential solutions. We've had that initial commission meeting with some form of group invited. And now we're letting the impacted folks know this is what we're planning to do. And we want to get your kind of signed feedback. Is this a good idea or not? This is what we're seeing from other communities. They're looking for a pretty high approval rating. This one is 70% approval, which seems pretty high. I don't know how that'll go, but that is what other communities generally are looking for. So 70% of folks have to respond, yes, this is what we think is a good idea. And again, this is that smaller impacted area. If 70% approval is not met, the project ends. It can be requested again in 12 months. So this is a brand new step that we haven't done in the past. Kind of a more than just a public meeting and input. This is a kind of real voting. Because as we've seen, we know what we've seen through experience. It's been kind of all over the place and it's been hard to figure out what the neighborhood really wants. It tends to be a few loud voices, as Councilman McCarthy was describing. Step 5 is trial implementation and staff evaluation. So you're familiar with this step. So once we've figured out what we want to do, we have this 70% consensus, then we go out and install trial traffic calming. We need to be really clear in the pamphlet and in our communication with the public that this doesn't necessarily happen tomorrow or even a week later, because we often rely on public works crews and they have a million different priorities. In the last couple summers, they've had very different priorities than they're used to having. And we've fallen behind on lots of signing, marking, and different things. And so these things have fallen even lower on the list. And that's been very frustrating for a lot of neighborhoods that you've seen and you've recommended improvements, and it's 12 months have passed and we're still working out details of getting installations done. So we need to be really clear about how that's going to work. So that's kind of the first bullet. The second bullet is these trial devices need to be up for 6 months. And we need to make sure they go through a winter so that we know how snow plowing is going to work with them. Again, this is generally what we do now, but the change here is that we're documenting this, or we're writing this up in the documentation that it will be up for 6 months and it needs to go through a winter. Step 6, so we will do a public meeting to present the results of the trial implementation. So after that 6 months, when we have decent weather, we'll measure the impacts of those traffic calming devices, and report that out to the commission. And remember how we've done this in the past is if the new metrics that we measure on the street go into that score sheet and it's below the threshold for needing traffic calming, then we've determined that the traffic calming that we've done is successful. There could be a bit of a do loop here if what we try doesn't work. Also could be a do loop here, that second bullet, if the public doesn't like what we've done. And this isn't voting, we're envisioning this more of a public meeting discussion like we've been having with these projects in the past. If we're happy with the metrics and we're happy with the public input, then we would look for the Transportation Commission to agree, let's make these permanent pending funding. And we talked about funding earlier. We don't have dedicated funding, but we're going to try to work through that through this budget cycle to try to carve out at least a little bit of funding for these projects. If mitigation strategy is not approved, we'll go back to step 3, which is kind of that do loop that I described when I said our new flow chart is much cleaner, but we still have a do loop. And then 7 is just make these permanent. This is really important. Again, if we can establish a budget, then we'll be better able to communicate to the public kind of timing of what these look like. You know, some cities I've heard get many years out. I remember visiting Seattle years ago, and Seattle was using they have a nice grid, so they were using almost exclusively mini circles. And I can't remember what the traffic engineer told me, but it was like they had 120 on the to-do list. And they could do like 5 a year, even a big city, or 10 a year. So they were 10 years out, but they had a list and it was predictable and people got it. And with 16 active, we're going to be something like that. If we can get through these on the study and get through these on this is the right thing to do, I think we're going to be quite a backlog unless we can find some funding that I'm not expecting to find in the numbers that we need. So again, annual budget I think will help provide some predictability to this program for us, for you, and for the citizens. Prioritization, we're recommending that this is first come, first served, because again, most projects don't have actual safety records or real safety concerns that we have. But if we do find a pattern of crashes, then we would recommend that one just goes to the top of the list. Because these, again, typically are quality of life. First come, first serve seems like a reasonable way. At least that's our recommendation. I think we're close to the end. We are.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll start with questions from the commission and then we'll take public comment. Commissioner Lead.
That 70%, thanks, Chair Morley. The 70%, think about where you draw the boundaries. And I think that's going to be the tricky part, right? So if you look at an improvement, thinking about Boulder Point in particular, and if it's at Tombaugh, where are those limits? Because if it's all of Boulder Point, you may not get the level of response, so it would never rise to that 70% threshold. So I think that's going to be pretty tricky. So I'm wondering if you guys have had conversations or thought about that.
We have, and what David had a good extensive talk with Peoria, and what they said was that's where I kind of brought up the example of if the device lands here, they typically, because that's so hard to figure out, I mean, it could impact people 2 miles away. So what they did is they just kept it simple and said, if the device lands here, we're going one intersection in each direction. And those are the most impacted people. And they would just limit it at that for each device. Boulder Point's tricky because we did, 4 or 5 sites. It would be trickier. We would want we wouldn't want us to do it in a dark room at the back of City Hall. We'd want to talk about that kind of thing so that we were all on the same page. But I agree, critical to figure out what that area would be. And the better we could set up the rule in the guidebook, the more predictable it would be for commissions in the future and for staff in the future. But yeah, that's the process that they're using and we're recommending. It works pretty well. I'll just say that in the valley, speed humps are really popular. We haven't been using them here. We might. We're going to meet with Public Works in a couple weeks and talk about it again. They're very popular, and they're also popular to get pulled back out. And that's one of the big reasons, because they're noisy. There's slowing down, there's acceleration, and there's the thump thump. I mean, they make noise. If people push, 15, 20 miles an hour, even depending on the vehicle, they'll go thump thump. And people don't like that. And so they'll ask to get them removed. And that's why in many cases they've gone to, okay, this is the impacted area because they're the ones that are going to be negatively impacted by the thump thump. And we want this 70% approval. So we're not putting them in, taking them out, putting them in, taking them out. There's been lots of backlash to speed humps. We haven't experienced it because we haven't been doing them, but that's part of what that voting comes from. Thanks for the question. That is a tricky spot.
Other questions from the commission? Go ahead.
In an area that, let's say the scenario is in an area where a neighborhood or a specific intersection receives improvements, goes through the whole process, receives improvements, and then if somebody then files another claim, I guess, with the transportation department, is that addressed in here? Is there a time period to refile for an area that has already been addressed? Because it goes from step one, we take the file citizen action traffic study request, and then goes into data collection and thresholds. And it's then at that point that in processing that claim, that then it's either, validated and moved on in the process or not. Does my question make sense?
It does make sense, and it kind of reminds me of Fremont that we're working on now. We had an initial request kind of at the 180 end of the neighborhood. We started working on that, and then we had a second request come in over by Peakview. And so we're treating those as two independent, though they're kind of getting combined because they're kind of the same issue. So your example is kind of like that, but you're saying like this block A came in and they requested, we ended up putting in a mini circle. And then, 8 doors down, someone requested again. Yeah, we didn't address if you were successful in going through the program, we didn't address you have to wait a certain time period to request again. But if you requested again, so the way the process should work is that block, we measured it and the calming was effective. So we installed it. And so you're now below that threshold of needing calming. So if someone new requested in that same block, our initial measurements should yield you're below the line still, so we don't move forward past step one. Normally, if I followed your question, I think that would take care of it, but no, we didn't say there's a waiting period.
And just thinking through, if somebody doesn't agree with something that's, been put in place and then provides another request, is there an obligation then to recollect the data, the same data that's already been collected?
We do address that. I believe we have a 12-month waiting period. Like if something's installed and then 10 people decide they don't like it, even maybe they were the 30%, but they also represent 10 people. Yeah, I think we say 12 months you need to wait because that's the speed hump in and out scenario. That's what you're describing?
Yeah.
Okay, so we do address that with 12 months, kind of a 12-month waiting period.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any commissioners online? Questions?
Yes, this is Nick.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kraft.
This is really looking good. I appreciate it. Thank you. And I see basically the commission is still heavily involved in the process. And at a previous meeting, we at least expressed an interest to not be so heavily involved in this process and that the city could handle a lot of it. My own personal opinion is we could be all the way out of it, but only brought in if the citizens felt they were, there was a problem and they needed someone else to come in and do that. So is that still being considered?
Let's talk about it tonight. We did model this process off of what we've basically been doing in the past and what we're seeing other communities do. I think that there are opportunities for some projects to just be worked through with staff, but we felt that the transparency of the commission, the opportunity for a public meeting here was really good and easy versus, I think if we didn't use the Transportation Commission, we would still schedule public meetings. They might still happen in the chambers and it would be, me sitting up there instead of you guys. And that didn't seem appropriate to me. But we're open. I mean, we'd like to make these go faster if we could, not having to meet Transportation Commission schedules. So I'm definitely interested in your thoughts on how that would work. But we do like the transparency of this. We do like the opportunity to invite the public in for a public meeting. I think they appreciate that generally. So yeah, let's talk about it. So yes, I've definitely heard you. I just don't know how to incorporate that. I need some help.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Go ahead. All right. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the public then. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Yes, Mr. Donaldson. Mr. Donaldson, I don't know if you're speaking yet, but we can't hear you. It looks like you are muted. There we go, unmuted.
It sounds like you guys have muted the room, so we can't hear the room right now.
Thank you. I was just calling on Mr. Donaldson. Mr. Donaldson, I don't know if you're trying to speak, but you're still on mute. And I don't know if it's not working. If you were to type something in the chat, I could read it to the commission, if that works. In the meantime, I'll move on to Councilmember Shimoni.
Thank you, Chair Morley. There it is. Thank you, Jeff and team, for your work on this, and commissioners for your consideration and your conversation so far. I just wanted to add in a couple of points. I'm just thinking through the lens of equity out loud with you all, and I'm just, wondering if someone who is working full-time, raising a family, recognizing that they have an issue with traffic calming in their neighborhood, raises that concern to the city. I just want to make sure we're not making the process too hard for folks, where that sense of forget it, it's not worth it, it's too many hurdles, I'm never going to get through this process, bureaucracy, yada, yada, government doesn't work for me mentality comes into play. The 70% seems high to me personally. That's my gut response. I haven't done research on this myself, but having knocked on doors across town, running for office twice, often people aren't home often people might even have second homes, so it's not even that they're like primary residents. Then you got short-term rentals as well. So I do wonder, considering that for council, it just takes a majority I wonder if a majority view is better than the 70% view for that initial hurdle. So like 55%, I wonder if that lowering that bar makes it more reachable, because I don't think we should be discouraging members of the public from commenting in the concerns and asking us to address the roads. I think that has a lot of merit, what they are bringing forward to us. And so I want to make sure we're not necessarily just making it harder for folks in order to get our numbers down. Jeff, so your comment about what's different now, if it's COVID or what it is, I think people are just, feeling more empowered with all the city council and the commission's discussions around transportation to speak up and to ask for change and for things to improve, because they feel like we're listening. So if they feel like we're listening and they are engaging, indeed, let's not shut them out, right? Let's bring them in. Let's look for validity in what they're saying. And my last point, Chair and Commission and staff, is just that let's look for the root causes, not just, mitigate solutions and band-aids to issues, but what's the root cause? Is it in our ordinance? Is it in our design standards? Is it in our road classifications? What is it? And let's have this commission actually address those points more than just addressing the band-aid solutions. Those are my comments. Thanks for hearing me out. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Any other members of the public? Yes, go ahead, Councilmember McCarthy.
Hey, just a quick comment. Some of these projects don't have hardly any impact to people a block away. But if they put a roundabout right in front of your house, that means that you can't park in front of your house. And, so I don't know how you address that, but it's a concern of mine that some people are way more impacted by this than other people a block or two away. Thank you.
All right, and I don't know, Mr. Donaldson, if you're still on, if you want to try again. We're still not hearing you. So like I said, if you want to put a comment in the chat, I'd be happy to read it for the commission. And with that, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period and open up discussion with the commission. Is there anyone who'd like to kick us off? All right, I will go. There's a couple comments from commissioners online, so I will start with Commissioner Kraft.
Hi, I worked it into a question, so I'm good. Thank you.
Sounds good. Commissioner Koenig.
Hi. Sorry if my connection's not great, so I'll try and be quick. So I see in step 3, there was the question of how many people we should invite to the meeting. And then by step 4, they're sending the mailer to the affected parties. And so my comment is that it seems to me that we want to have those affected parties invited to the meeting in step 3. So not just the original 10 people, but anybody that would be affected based on the criteria selected for that action. And then in the section 6, the do loop, I feel like this is where it gets tricky. If it meets the requirements, but the public declines it, do we keep working then? Or to find something else? Or do we just move on to the next project and then put this back in the cycle? I get if we do something and it doesn't meet the requirements, we may have to do something else. but yeah, that do loop can take anywhere from 1 time to 10 times. And so I don't know if we want to say after 2 years on this project, we stop working on it and move on to something else. And then a couple other comments on the first page, the first sentence of the document. It states that they recognize that cut-through traffic is one of the things that can be a quality of life issue. And if we got rid of cut-through traffic as a criteria for this, do we want to leave that in the first sentence of the document or not? And then in the document, it goes through a series of, I like that it calls out what type of resolutions can be, whether it's sort of vertical or horizontal, whether you're shifting people on chicanes or whether you're putting speed bumps in. And I just want to highlight that most of the horizontal displacements are typically bad for cyclists. And so, yeah, just, I still think that one of the issues we have is that we don't have all the tools we need to be able to resolve these things for residents. It's possible that this process at least makes us not spend as much time on things where we simply don't have the tools we need right now. And I don't know what other options there are to get different tools to make that work. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cruikshank.
All right. Thanks, Chair Morley. Thanks, Jeff, as well for the presentation. I just wanted to weigh in on a couple of things that have come up quite a bit. My initial thought on the 70% threshold in terms of approval from the neighborhood seemed high as well. I don't know, Jeff, if you have other info as what's common in other cities, but that did seem a little high to me. So that's one of my comments. The other one, again, related to how many people to invite to the first meeting. I just think if you open it up to everybody, I mean, maybe not that many people will come, but I worry that a commission meeting could go on for a long time if there's how many people, 20 people, 30 people, I don't know. But I would rather limit the size of the initial meeting just to focus our time, but that's just my opinion. I think those are my two main comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Commissioner Lee.
Thank you, Chair Morley. So this is fantastic. I'm really happy to see these changes. I really like that there are 10 signatures that are needed to move this forward, because there is a big time investment that's made by staff, and then it gets brought to the Transportation Commission, kind of speaking to what Commissioner Kraft had said of, how can we streamline this process? And I think this is a way to also make it more equitable between neighborhoods that get in the program for traffic calming. So I think this is great. I don't think that seeking those 10 signatures is onerous by any means. I mean, we're talking about, tens of thousands, if not more, hundreds of thousands of dollars in infrastructure investment that would happen in addition to the staff time. So I think that it's important that we hear from many voices from the community in order to move forward with vetting this process. So I think that's great. I think as far as the 70% is concerned, I think it has to do with where you draw the boundaries. To what you were talking about earlier, Jeff, of it, if the boundary is because that 70% are the ones that are in the immediate area of the mitigation. So that 70% may be 6 out of the 8 homes, for example, that might be in the immediate area of a traffic circle or speed humps or something like that. So I think we could look at, if there's concern about that 70%, do you reduce that percentage, but then look at a broader area, or how those two just play together. So I think that might need a little bit more vetting. I think the biggest thing for me is the annual budget piece, and where these funds come from for the implementation and being able to have a program. Right now, it's not in 419. So I think that's going to be one of the larger hurdles moving this forward. And then I think my last comment is related to public involvement. I think it is important that it comes in front of the Transportation Commission because this is the vehicle for that public involvement. So when you have a neighborhood meeting, that can be accomplished here instead of organizing and conducting a separate event. So I suggest that part be included and continued as planned.
Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. I think I share similar opinion as most other folks. Definitely the 70% seems high. At the same time, I can understand if the folks in that 30% are most impacted by if there's physical improvements put in place or whatever the percentages are. So I think it's worth having a high percentage to vote for a high percentage of agreement to implement a change because they could potentially be severely impactful to a few folks. Definitely acknowledging that could be a challenge based on where the boundaries are and the complexion of the neighborhood and whether they're permanent residents, second homes, or other scenarios. I like agreeing with Commissioner Lead, continuing the discussion with the Transportation Commission and having the public meeting platform for people to have that discussion and be able to talk through them. I think that's important. And then my last note here had to do on the public meeting, and I agree. I think step 3 makes a whole lot of sense to bring folks in when the proposed improvements are being discussed, and then coming out of that meeting with a mitigation strategy to then implement on a temporary basis. That's it. Thank you. It was a great presentation, and I think it's a great process. It's going to be very helpful and beneficial.
Thank you. I think that's all the commissioners besides me. There's a lot here. I have a number of comments. Overall, I want to say I'm very supportive of the program and particularly the checklist that this commission has used to make decisions. I think it's fair the way we evaluate, determining if there's an issue and it's consistent. And so I'm glad to see that change. I'm happy to take out the cut through traffic as we talked about. I think that's aligned with the policies of the city to be creating access points and options for people. I'm struggling with the role of the commission a little bit because I do think that this could be a ministerial process because I believe in that checklist. I'm like, great, if it meets the checklist, implement traffic calming, and if it doesn't, don't, and move forward. But I recognize the need for the public to be able to comment on things, and so if this, I will ask the commission because I'm hearing both sides, to weigh in on that particular topic of. As Jeff said, tonight is the night to talk about it. I think, the public, and fundamentally, I'm really questioning what the role of the public is besides bringing us the challenge. And I'm very supportive of the 10, I think 10 signatures or, if it's a very small neighborhood or block, we could maybe modify that if there's not 10 houses or something, we can be reasonable humans. I think that there's great value in the public being involved in that stage of telling us that there's an issue they want us to look at. But from my perspective, after that, we have a formula for if we agree it's a problem worth resolving. And then once it hits that formula, it's like, yeah, people are speeding, average speed is 35. That's something that we need to take care of. Obviously, it's more complicated than that, but summarizing, we need to take care of that and do traffic calming. I'd also then just love to empower staff to have the tools and skill sets to implement traffic calming that is, researched and designed. You know, I'm thinking of some of the things you have in the back of the book, but I also think that there's new things out there that aren't in the back of the book right now. I know NACTO has a lot of traffic calming things that are implemented in a neighborhood because we know there's a speeding problem. So we've identified a speeding problem, let's fix it. And at that point, it's not about whether or not you got a traffic calming circle in front of your house and not this back and forth of are we going to keep it in or keep it out. It's like you brought forth a problem, we agreed it's a problem, and now we're going to resolve that problem for you. And even if you don't like all the outcomes of that problem, I say that as a adjacent house on a busy street to a stop sign that here's the cars stop and go, I don't really know that it's my place. I don't feel like it's my place as a citizen to be able to come back to the city and say, I want you to remove that stop sign if it's the right traffic measure. So I guess I know that that's big and broad, but I think that's ultimately where I'm at is if I think the tools allow us to identify that we have a problem and then it's our obligation to resolve it with best practices. And I don't really know that I think I want us to be in a place where we're implementing best practices and it's not a public debate over what the roadway design should be or what the traffic calming, if it's right that it's a roundabout or a chicane or whatever. It's that this is the appropriate measure for this type of development and how you get a bike through it safely at the same time as do traffic calming. So with that, I know that's it. So we can talk about that a little bit more as we answer the question about what is the role of the commission more specifically. But I think I'm also in a place where if we move forward as is, I'm also okay with that, except I do think the number of signatures needs to drop. And I actually think, I mean, I'd be okay with that going away, obviously, altogether based on my previous comment. But I think that it's hard to get people to comment on something theoretical. And so the order of that needs to come after we've implemented the thing and not before we've implemented the thing. Because when it's just theory, it's hard to, I don't know, for people to give us accurate or good feedback based on a proposal. And I echo some of the things I think that we heard from Councilmember Shimoni about, you know, the equity component of asking someone to gather that many signatures. There are probably some people who are more capable of doing that than others due to life circumstances. I also agree with Commissioner Lee that the budget piece is huge because if we don't have budget and staff to be dealing with 16 requests, then we're spending a lot of time up here. I want to be practical and say, okay, it could take 10 years to get through this, but that also feels like a really long time just to catch up with the open projects currently. And then I'm also very excited, and maybe this isn't the right toolbox, but I know there's some work on a transportation toolbox going on that I think is looking at, you know, the structural issues so that we don't keep creating roads this way, that we don't have to come back and do traffic calming in later. So I think that that's part of that overall project that's going to go on, and I'm excited for the look at the codes and engineering that might drastically change the way we build future roads so that we're not having 16 open complaints and a bunch of staff time going into resolving them. So with that, I think we heard some answers. I think everyone was on the same page of 70% is high. There was the question of who to send the invites to, and I think I heard the commission say, also my computer died, so I can't see comments anymore. If you could help, you do think, okay. I think I heard the commissioner say that we should send invites to the affected neighbors and not just the people who complained to the commission. And the other open question, I think, really is like, what is the role of the commission altogether? So I'll pause and Jeff, who has a comment?
So we did get a comment from Mr. Donaldson. It's fairly long. I can read it. It's not super long, but it's so he writes, well, his last comment is, sorry, my mic doesn't seem to work. Thank you for the opportunity. But then his comment is, why a non-response to be counted as no? So I think that's with step 5, I believe. I think a non-response should be considered a positive response. If that were the case, it seems more people would make it a point to get involved if they were interested. 10 signing on, so that's the first step. 10 signing on is an easy task on Linda Vista. but getting 10 to appear is a real task.
Thank you. Thank you for reading that for us as well. Great. So is there, I guess I'll say, does anyone want to talk about or add comments to what the role of the commission is? And then I'll look for us to take a informal vote to give Jeff direction on that item. Yeah, Councilmember McCarthy.
Just to clarify, is the intent that it's 70% of those that respond or 70% of those that might have responded? In other words, do you just count the yes and no votes, or do you count the ones that don't respond some way? To me, if they don't respond, they don't get the vote. It would seem that you would only count the yeses and the nos.
I'll let Jeff answer that question.
If you don't mind, let me run through this really quick because I think maybe there might be a little bit of crossover of the different things. So first step is to get 10 signatures of people 18. So that's the part that the citizen would need to do. They need to get 10 signatures. After that, all the voting and everything would be taken care of by staff. So that wouldn't be anything citizen. They would need to respond, but they wouldn't have to send out 30 surveys or hit the neighborhood. So step 2 is collect the data and check to see what happens. Step 3 is where we figure out who we're inviting. It sounds like we'd like to invite a larger area. We probably do want to figure out what that looks like, because that's going to happen before you even see the project. So we should talk about, is that like the Peoria example where it's block to block, or is it more like Boulder Point? We just hit the whole neighborhood. I'm giving you more questions. That's step 3. Step 4 is, we've determined there's an issue that we need to mitigate. Staff's figured out what it could look like as a trial installation, and we send out a mailer to invite people to the meeting. And that was the question: do we do the 10 or do we do the bigger group? Bigger group, but the staff does that mailing. And 70% approval is needed for the mitigation strategy to be installed in a temporary fashion. So we don't have it defined, I don't believe, but what we were thinking about, we should define it. What we were thinking about and what we had heard other cities do is positive responses. We send out 10, we need 7 positives to come back in. Not 3 out of the 4 to be positive. We need 7 positives. So it's maybe an even higher threshold than some of you were thinking 70% is. So I'm glad you asked that question. But that sounds like that's a question up for debate. Maybe I'll stop here, but I just wanted to step through those to make sure it was clear, because it's a little bit complicated.
All right, I'll open it up for further discussion on 2 things: the role of the commission and the area of impact. Does anyone have any thoughts on either of those? And again, sorry, Jeff, if you can help me on the chat. Commissioner Lee.
Thanks, Chair Morley. I think that to have the mitigation determined prior to coming into the public meeting is that important step for because discussing here at a commission design strategies probably isn't the best place. So I fully support that comment and that strategy, but I still think this needs to be the public platform to conduct those meetings, but not to have a discussion about the design itself.
And do you have any thoughts on how far notice should occur?
Well, the initial 10 signatures could be anywhere in the neighborhood. So let's take Boulder Point. It's just our example tonight. So the Boulder Point example could be you could collect 10 signatures from Tombaugh all the way to the whole loop, right? Which is a different percentage, because then we talk about implementation, and then it could be 70% in the immediate area of that improvement. If you have the 10 signatures from the entire neighborhood, tell the neighborhood what you're doing, and you'll get a handful of people here to speak to that.
Great, thank you. Any comments online?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Kona. Go ahead.
I think that more than one signature is important. This isn't a small amount of work that it kicks off. And to have one person who's not happy with something to be able to then cost the town and other citizens and opportunities, I think it makes sense to have more than one signature, whether that's 10 or that's 5. I don't think you want it to be 2. And also, I think it's important to talk to your neighbors about things. I think that's the way we want these communities to work in general. And I realize that every person isn't as social and may not be as good at collecting a lot of signatures. But I think for the amount of work that you're requesting of the city and of the engineers and the opportunity cost to other neighborhoods, I think 5 or 10 signatures doesn't seem too much to me. As for the role of the commission, I don't, speeding is a social thing that individuals make a decision on every time they drive. And I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we have an easy list of engineering solutions that you can implement that resolves them. And I think there'll always be some element where the citizens want people to come and talk to and have a discussion about it. And so while I agree that we don't have to be as involved as we used to be, I think it's important that at least at some point in time it comes before the Transportation Commission. To Julie's point, it seems like it makes sense that it's once the solution already exists and it just comes before us to say this is what we're going to do, and that will help to limit the comments. But I think we want public comment at some point in time, or the citizens want us to hear public comment at some point in time, which I think is fair. That's all.
Thank you.
And we also have Commissioner Kraft with a comment.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Kraft.
Yes, regarding involvement, it sounds like a public meeting is important. So, I would suggest that we do it in step 6 and not in step 3. Step 3 is sort of an early, we had meetings in the past where we were asked to weigh in on which solution we thought was right. I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm a citizen volunteer, and I would rather leave it to them to figure out that. They have the knowledge and experience, but to sort of, be available to evaluate it and pass it later on might make sense. And then regarding, well, it's interesting, we have a percentage regarding approval, but then we have a number in another case, it seems like we need to have a way of having a system that responds to each case. So, if there's 50 people involved, that's one thing. If there's 5 people involved, that's another thing. So perhaps percentages across the board would make more sense if that fits, or if you could make it fit. 70 seems high to me as well. I do feel like to some degree we are placing barriers here to make sure that people are serious about what they're asking for in order to warrant the attention and the money that will be, given to them in this process. So that is all.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. I think I touched on it earlier in my comments, but just to reiterate, I think the commission meeting is a good platform for the public to provide their input, to share, to understand the discussion and the options or the mitigation measures that are being proposed. I think, so I agree with that, and I think it's an important distinction to make too, that it's discussing the mitigation measures and whether or not they mitigate the issue and whether or not they're going to be implemented and not necessarily a design meeting. I think that could get out of hand and miss the purpose. The other part is relative to the area. I think the broader providing opportunity for broader input is important uh, for similar reasons discussed. And then just because you don't live maybe at the house that's impacted, you are still part of the neighborhood, and I think you should still have input into the overall improvements being suggested and discussed.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so I think I'm hearing that it should come to the commission, but later stage, so that it's not, so that there is already a design at that stage and not that we're weighing in on design. I'm hearing broad outreach for the invite notice. I know you were looking for some specifics, so I might offer like maybe look at what planning asks people to do for CUPs or that kind of stuff could be a place to mimic or copy from. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel potentially. I think, we're hearing that maybe the graphics in the back, maybe noting that, that cyclist access is a priority, or you could potentially even take them out and just, because I do think there's a broader universe than what you have back there. Let's see. I think that those, oh, the 70%. I think we're consistently hearing that the 70% is too high a bar. I don't know that I heard a specific recommendation as to what the yes vote should be on that, on approving a solution. But 70 is too high. Do you need more direction, Jeff?
What I was thinking, yes, I agree. I've heard 70% feels too high. So let me, because I didn't do all the research, let me ask David what he found exactly.
Okay.
At different communities, and I mean that's an easy. I assumed we'd come back in December anyways. So let's come back with what other communities are doing and how they're doing it as well. Is it all? We send 10 out, we need 7 positives back, or is it just the ones we get back, or even is it the opposite like Mr. Donaldson suggested, and you're only asking for no votes. Let's find out what other people are doing exactly. I think that could help us a little bit on that one. Yeah, advertising to the broader area, that's a good suggestion. We can look at the CUP process. We've used the HOAs when there's an HOA, but that definitely treats neighborhoods differently. So some neighborhoods won't have an HOA, so that one we do need some sort of boundary. With the HOA neighborhoods, it's pretty easy. We just get a hold of the HOA board or the company typically that runs the board. So that's pretty easy. I had a thought on, step 3, the first public meeting. We have often brought you, I mean, we appreciate what you've said about the traffic engineers should know what to do. We do know what to do, but we also, obviously, we love the public input. That's part of the process. That's what the world we live in transportation. We could try to focus those meetings instead of bringing you a really broad, here's 7 different options. And we only give you options that work. We don't give you options that don't work, or that we think will work. But we could focus it to one scenario. So when the public first comes in, it's like, hey, this is what we think is the right solution. And then, I mean, it may not work, but we could try to focus that discussion more so it's not that really long slog that we've had. Just a thought.
Yeah, I like that thought personally. I think I heard that from a couple other commissioners. And I think, the background, where we've gotten into debates on it is over how the bike access moves through. And so I would just say, I think we're hearing consistently that we've got to consider bike access when you bring us designs. And I think you'll find support with designs that consider that. Yes. It's tricky. I know it's not hard. Or I know it's not easy. It is hard. That's what I was saying. Great. Are there any other open questions on this one or direction you need from us?
I don't need any more direction, but I will come back in December. Does that sound good? We'll put this back on the agenda. Okay.
Yes.
So we'll update the document and get that out to you ahead of time.
Yep.
Again, December's quick, especially with Thanksgiving. So we'll try to get that out in like the next 2 weeks. So you have a little bit of time. It's not huge, right? It's only 10 pages, but I'll still try to get it out early for you to take a look at.
Thank you. And the other thing I'll just say to the commission is I know this time and last time, the budget aspects have been brought back with the annual budget, the staffing support that's needed. And so I would like to add an agenda item for next, a related agenda item for the next meeting for us to consider a budget request to the council and writing a letter of support for that. Yes.
A quick comment. Sometimes there's trade-offs. For instance, in Boulder Point, the solution we came up with, the bike lane just stops. So if you're a bicyclist, where do you go? Do you go on the sidewalk? Do you take the lane? Well, those are things that might want to be discussed in the public meeting as a trade-off. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving to the next agenda item, the role of the Transportation Commission. Oh,
And yeah, this is me as well. I'm the only one here tonight. Let's see here. I think it's this one.
we have a comment from Councilmember Shimoni, so maybe I'll call for that real quick while we're on the agenda item.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off of your comment about the letter of recommendation. I think that's in regards to, are you talking about in regards to staffing or for funding for these different projects, or what was that letter of recommendation for?
My thought was to have the commission consider budget for both staffing and an annual fund as suggested by Jeff tonight.
Gotcha. Okay, and I know you were in attendance last night, Chair Morley, but for others that might not have been, on the topic of the ATMP, I did ask staff to, I planted the seed about, having a budget recommendation for additional staffing to support Martin in terms of like traffic demand management positions, along with multimodal planner positions potentially. I definitely look to Jeff and Martin for their expertise in terms of what positions are needed, but we've been talking a lot about Boulder, and their team has 10 Martins. Literally, they're all named Martin. No, I'm just kidding. But they do have 10 people working like on a team that Martin could be part of, and we only have one Martin. So that's an issue. And so I fully support that. And I think the Transportation Commission's letter of support would actually go a long way in helping the council have the political will to see this across the finish line. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, now moving on to the next agenda item, role of the Transportation Commission.
Thank you, Chair. And this one, I was almost going to recommend we wait because we have 3 new commissioners next month, but we can do this and we can do it again another time.
Jeff, I actually think that makes a lot of sense if you're going to onboard new commissioners next time. I know we have a long agenda for next time as well. How are you? I hate to make you do it twice.
Yeah, we're not quite to previewing the next agenda. It's not terrible next month at this point. So yeah, we can definitely fit this in next month. I can send this to you ahead of time. I could go through it really quick just to give you a feel for what it's going to be, but I'm happy to do it again, or we can just wait. Basically, I've just copied the sections of the city code that describes the Transportation Commission. So I'm going to go through what the membership looks like, how long your terms are, and then there's 2 slides that kind of define your roles and responsibilities. Traffic calming is never mentioned, so it may be something we want to update. And then there's a couple things that are mentioned that we never do, and so we should talk about whether that's a good idea to do them or not. And then the last couple slides, I just highlighted my position, or the Office of the Traffic Engineers in City Code as well, and just highlight what those roles are, because they are different than the Transportation Commission. So it would be better with onboarding new folks. We can do it December for sure, but that's what I was going to go over.
Well,
in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe you could just give us the real quick overview of the 2 slides with the tasks of the commission, being that you're looking for feedback as to potential changes, and then the commission can think about it over the next month. and hopefully have a more productive dialogue, if that works for you.
Works for me. So here we go. This is the functions of the commission. I think it is just in 2 slides. So A is formulate and recommend policies and ordinances to the city council governing general operations of streets, alleys, sidewalks, and bikeways. That's totally expected. That's, I think, what we were just working on. Review periodically traffic regulation actions of the engineering program, transportation engineering program. So traffic regulations are when staff install stop signs or red curb or a traffic signal, or any of those things. We keep a log of all of that work. I have brought those to the commission, and you folks fall asleep after I go through the third one. So we should keep it here because it is something you're supposed to have some oversight. My understanding, this became part of code when the city council delegated that authority to the office of the traffic engineer, because it used to be apparently every time a stop sign went up, we came to city council and did a presentation. Unbelievable. Yeah, that's my understanding from way back. You may have worked somewhere where it was like that. To promote ped, bike, transit, and driver education programs in the school systems. We've talked about this, but it's not something we've done. So it's something to think about. This one's a good one, and we've done this, but a light form. So annually advise the city council the progress and expenditures of the city's streets transportation CIP, funded by transportation tax. But this is the old tax. This isn't 419 and 420. So this would, if this was something we still want to do, and I think council would want us to continue doing this, I don't think we probably even need to ask them. This should be updated to talk about 419 and 20. I think 14 is probably road repair and street safety. So yeah, so we got rid of, this was initially put in for transportation tax 2000. It was updated to this. Anyways, it needs some updating on that top paragraph. And here's the expectations. We meet annually with the CIP, and we do that. Generally, we meet Trevor. It's Trevor right now, of course, is our capital improvements engineer, and it's actually more than once a year. Ensure there's a coordinated approach for budgeting and expending sales tax revenues for all modes. Usually we're just really going over the program, so we're probably hitting number 2 really light. Provide input on the prioritization. We spend a lot of time with Martin on his prioritization because he's got a whole bunch of projects through his program. The general transportation kind of road projects, there's really not that many. There really isn't a lot of moving around, but we kind of talk about that. We could probably hit that a little bit harder with you. This is continued. Number 4 is provide a public forum. Of course, it's a public meeting, so we hit that, check that box. Publish an annual advisory report. We haven't done that in a very long time, but we did do that way back with Transportation Tax 2000. Those of you that have been around here a while, Stu Subert did that every year for us. But when Stu retired, we kind of lost that. I'm not sure if it has value to anyone, but it's something to think about. And then present the findings of that report. And so the chair of the commission used to come to city council and present the annual report.
Interesting.
Interesting. We haven't done that in a very long time. That was it. So that was kind of the functions as they are listed today. Nothing about traffic calming. Might want to list it specifically.
Yeah.
So
Any?
There's the punchline. The rest of it, it's stuff you know.
Thank you. I look forward to the full presentation with the new commission. But in the meantime, any questions on what was presented? Hey, Chap. Oh, yes, Councilmember.
So do you want to add anything about doing things like traffic calming? Because you do that, so it should be in the list of what you do.
Yes. Any comments? Or sorry, any public comments on this item? Thank you. And then any discussion from the commission? Great. Well, I look forward to a good discussion in December and for time for people to think it over in the meantime. So thank you, Jeff. Moving on to agenda item 4, concluding general business. Any reports from the bike and ped committees?
Don't have any specific reports, but we do put those minutes out. and these are the links to those. I think we've fallen a little bit behind in posting, but we've introduced Dee, and she's helping us get up to date, and you should see some action on the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee getting their stuff up to date, and you will have probably a massive list of minutes for the December meeting because we're getting caught up. We're doing really well. So no official report, but those are the websites to go take a look for those meetings. And BAC meets this week, tomorrow.
Thank you. Informational items to and from commissioners and staff. Any updates? I will say, congrats to city staff on adoption of the ATMP last night. That's been a long process and is very exciting to see move forward. So definitely want to recognize all the work that went into that. Commissioner Lead.
I attended the Mountain Line Citizen Advisory Committee meeting closeout for evaluating frequency and service areas and looking at priorities. So it's a great conclusion of about a year-long effort to be able to move forward, getting a lot of feedback from the public about transit service and the needs in the community. And my understanding is that'll be the next steps in that process will be forming another citizens committee about how to fund that, what if it's a tax ask or something else moving forward. So that's exciting as Mountain Line looks to serve more in greater areas.
Thank you. Thanks for your participation. Any other to or from items from commissioners or staff members? All right. Our next meeting is December 7th. We have a number of tentative agenda items. Cosmic Ray Tunnel sounds exciting. So does the Rainbow Crosswalk, also very exciting. We'll continue our discussion on the residential management program. And then the Fremont traffic calming is coming back as well. As I mentioned, I'd love to talk about a recommendation to council for funding for the transportation program. Any other agenda items anyone was hoping to see or have that are timely?
Would you like a little preview of these items before, right now, or not yet?
No surprises. It's very exciting agenda the way it's worded here.
Pretty excited about this. Yeah.
Great. Oh, yes, city manager, please.
Oh, good.
Thank you. I just wanted to extend heartfelt thanks to Julie Lead for serving as chair, and thanks for your service. And thank you, Madam Chair, for stepping up. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Yes, we are very grateful for Julie and then Commissioner Kraft, who is leaving us tonight as well. So, all right. Well, that is the end of our agenda. So do we have a motion to adjourn? A second?
Second.
Seconded.
Oh, I heard Commissioner Hanson there. First, he beat you, Commissioner Kraft. All in
Got it.
favor? Aye.
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 All right. Everybody have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.